Every big win starts long before game day. On any given Monday, we go where cameras don't. Behind the contracts, the calls, and the chaos. We'll road trip with scouts, visit iconic campuses, step inside replay booths, and walk up to the luxury suites. Real organizations, real stories, real decisions. Lace up your cleats, buckle your chin strap. Here comes our GM, Matthew Miley.
All right. My first guest is Matthew Zmuda. Matthew is a graduate of my high school, Toledo St. Francis, and is a scout for the Detroit Tigers. He was a lefty pitcher in college at Denison University, where he played with his twin brother, Eric, Go Big Red. I don't know if you can see my Denison baseball
look
shirt
at
I got
that.
on here.
There we go, Matthew. Go Big Red is right,
Go
man.
Big Red.
Wow, those colors look good on you, man.
Thank you. Well, first, let's get to the big picture. So when I think of a scout, really baseball, basketball, football, hockey, any sport, I think of traveling all across the country, taking phone calls every night about new prospects here, there,
Certainly.
living out a suitcase, But
Yes.
is that really what it's like, or what's the typical calendar cycle for a
Yeah.
guy like
You
you?
know what? A lot of the stereotypes actually are met, I would say. It is a life of sacrifice from a foundation standpoint at home. Your people that your wife, your kids, anybody in your family, you're away from them quite a bit. Obviously, you're on the road and you spend most of the time in your specific territory. Myself specifically, I work in the Midwest, live in Toledo, cover 5 states, cover Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. So depending on the time of the year, from fall to winter to spring, our travels look quite a bit different. Fall ball, fall baseball, when colleges get going again, we're on the road quite a bit. And seeing games, seeing scrimmages, and benefiting from kind of the intimacy of the fall baseball schedule. During the spring, you're not getting as close with the players. You're more or less there to see the players perform in the spring. Wintertime is kind of the slower months. That's the time when we know of the players we want to see and invest our time in. And that's where you go into the houses. You meet with the players of interest. You get to know them, their families. If it's a college player, you get to know their coaches, what their coaches think of them. So yes, it is life on the road. I would say the road looks a little bit different depending on the time of year.
Yeah. Sounds.
Yeah.
It still sounds sweet to do.
Yeah. No, it's fun, man. It is. You get in a good cadence, I would say. You get in a good rhythm of early in the fall. The schedule kind of breaks down early in the fall. You are really getting introduced to the next class's prospects, especially collegiately. I'd say late, June, July, August, you get to see a lot of high school players. So most recently, what have I done? I was at 2 large showcases for what will be graduates in the 2026 class. So that's getting to know high school players, who are the best players in area, who are the best players in the country, getting to see them compete and get an idea of, where are you going to spend your time come springtime, whether as it relates to the high school player. And then fall baseball comes around. And like I said, it's just a good time to see who's eligible, to see who's made the biggest strides. And a topic for a different day, the transfer portal keeps us guessing. You might go to Ohio State or Michigan, and each fall you're kind of surprised at names you see on the roster because they weren't there last year. They might not be there the following year. The transfer portal has definitely played a huge role in what we do, a huge role in what a future recruit might be thinking, and then obviously the collegiate player. When people and boosters are throwing money at guys, the advantage, I would say, of moving to the biggest and best gets a little bit brighter. So yeah, life on the road is good, man. And we're kind of in a slower period right now, I should say, in the month of August as we get ready for high school and college baseball to kick up in the fall. but hey, the reports never stop. You're always writing something, you're always paying attention to something, or just a tidbit of information you can pick up on players.
Yeah. So if you could break it down to like a couple points, 4 or 5, what are like the main things you're really looking for when you're out scouting collegiate or high school athletes?
Certainly. Yeah, yeah. I think I would say even from when I first started back in 2017, the game's evolved quite a bit. So first and foremost, we see it on the TV every night in Major League Baseball games. Guys are throwing harder, guys are hitting the ball further and harder on average. What used to be notable when a guy hit 95, you can go to a high school showcase now, you can see 95 2 dozen times in a week. So that speaks to the caliber of player, the physicality of player. First and foremost, we're looking for good athletes. Good athletes is the base and the foundation. There are big leaguers that aren't fantastic athletes, but they have a distinct skill that they're extremely good at. But first and foremost, what's the baseline of a player I'm going to see at a ballpark that I'm hoping to run into? It's athleticism. Athleticism, I also think it plays well into body control. We all could name guys with who's the best athlete in your high school class, or who's the best athlete at this school. That doesn't necessarily mean they have body control and know how their body moves on a baseball field, on a pitching mound, in the batter's box. That's the second thing I probably look for. Not speaking specifically about tools, but those transform being on the mound or being in the box. If you can repeat your body movements along with the other baseball tools you have, it's going to give you a lot better opportunity to have success on the field. Splitting it off, pitching wise, you look for sound deliveries, guys that look like they have starting pitcher operations. We look for guys that do it easy, as I've been taught. You look for fluid arm strokes. You look for guys that can repeat their line down the mound. Velocity, it's obviously very attractive. Guys that throw hard are more attractive than guys that don't throw hard most of the time. But you also look for polish. It's nice to have guys that can throw hard, but also know where it's going. The command piece is just as big of a piece as the velocity piece is. And, you want it on the mound. You also want to see a good pitch mix. It can't just be one dimensional. It can't just be a fastball. We want to see guys mix in different shapes, different pitches, a changeup, a curveball, a cutter, whatever it may be. You just want to see guys dictating different tempos and different paces for the hitters to have to correspond to. So, in the box, to pivot over to the hitting side of things, specifically, I look for guys with just loose, rhythmic, balanced swings. Obviously, bat speed is what everybody looks for. Who can whip the bat through the zone the fastest to create the most backspin and the most pure bat speed and exit velocity. That being said, some of the best hitters in the major leagues aren't the guys that swing the hardest. You got guys like Giancarlo Stanton, who's up here as it relates to bat speed, and you got guys like Luis Ariz with San Diego, who's got one of the lowest average bat speeds, but is also probably the best pure hitter in baseball. So that's a fun juxtaposition for us to figure out in the amateur world, because it doesn't always line up. So you got to watch guys over and over again. And hitting wise, it's not all about just pure power or pure hitting. Plate approach plays a huge piece in what we're looking for. Guys that know the zone, don't expand the zone necessarily, understand where the margins are, can identify, is that a breaking ball or is that a fastball coming out of a pitcher's hand? So those are kind of frameworks and foundations. There's a lot of different ways to go off of those. But obviously, like I said, going back to my first part of the answer is athleticism and body control, I think, play and give players so much more of an opportunity to execute their tools on the field over and over and over again. And then hopefully, you want to see those translate from college and high school to professional baseball, obviously starting in the minor leagues and working your way up to hopefully Detroit. So, those are just a couple of the pieces, but very important, to get the road started with a prospect.
Yeah. So let's say you run into, player X and you're like, this kid is, special, he can be something. So you want to report him to the Tigers and bring him up to someone higher. Do you send an email, write, a little paper about him, or what's the process of getting his name out?
Yeah, so certainly. So our department is broken up into, I'm an area scout, so I cover a territory. We kind of refer to ourselves as the guy that gets the road started, the history started with a player. We're usually the first ones in the house to meet the player, to get an idea of who that player is on the field and off the field. It's our job not to make the decisions at the end of the day, but to identify who in those 5 states or 4 states that you cover is worth those that you work for and work with coming in to see. So it's really important to identify guys in the fall, players and prospects, high school and college, meet them in the winter time, but also during both of those periods of times, you're communicating with what you call a cross checker. So a cross checker, they have and take care of 5 area guys. So they're a supervisor would be another term outside of baseball, but a cross checker is what we use. I work for a Midwest cross checker. He covers 5 of us area guys. And you want to put him in the best spot to have success and come in and see the best players. They have valuable time because they do the flying, the area scouts do the driving. So they only have so many days to see players. So you want to get them to come in and see your 15 or 20 best guys. Sometimes it's 10 or 15, whatever it may be, depending on the year. So the cross checker comes in. So it's kind of just rungs, the area scout rung. Then you got the cross checker rung. And then if the cross checker really likes the player, it ends up getting tossed back up to the national cross checker and our director of scouting. So those guys, they see the best of the best players in the country, or those that we as an organization are most attracted to. And like I said, as you go up the rungs, the time gets more and more precious. Those guys are flying around the country away from their families more than even an area scout is. So you want to bring them around to see the best players possible come springtime. But that being said, I can't understate, Matthew, the dialogue annually from beginning of the scouting calendar to the end, it's daily. If it's not daily, it's every other day. You're constantly communicating with your boss, letting him know who excites you. He'll let you know if he sees a group of your players who excites him. So it's very much a teamwork approach. But we can't afford, I don't think any organization can afford to have information fall through the cracks. So that's why we communicate over the phone so frequently. We spend some time together, but more or less it's over the phone communication. And you want to set your teammates and those that you work for up for success from fall ball to winter meetings to spring to obviously July in the draft. So like I said, I kind of think of it as a little bit of a ladder as it relates to the information, and you want to get the best information up to the top to hopefully land the best players.
So is scouting across the league like kind of secretive? Like you guys keep yourselves like personally, if I was a scout, I wouldn't want like for the Tigers like the Royals or Guardians or Sox or Twins to really know who I'm looking at. So is that kind of what it's like, or is it more like laid back and
it's you kind of create, I always think you kind of create your own competitive edge. Some of my best friends in the game work for other teams, and their relationships that you forged by being at the ballpark with them over and over and over again. I would say even in the age of social media, of perfect game, of PBR, of Twitter, keeping players under rocks is a little bit harder than it used to be. Even, if we're referring to early 2000s scouting or 1990s or 1980s scouting, with limited communication and social media, word travels so fast that, yes, it is competitive, but a lot of the players that are in your area are players that most of the area scouts know about. Now, that doesn't mean that you all feel the same way about that player. Some area scout with another team might think he's a day 3 or day 2 type draft guy. You might see him in the top 5 rounds in your eyes. You don't necessarily know that, but over time, area scouts and just scouts in general, they create kind of an idea in their head and kind of just a behind the scenes process of, you go to a game. There's a guy that maybe only 5 or 6 guys or teams are on. You want to identify what teams are there. You don't want to not know who else has interest in that player, because that's pretty important. Who am I competing against once things get closer and closer to the draft? So that's where the competition comes into play. You're cordial with guys, a lot of information um, is public information. So there's not a lot that's hidden.
Hmm.
But that being said, there's different levels of information you get. Can you create an advantage and create a really good relationship with mom and dad of that player in order to find out something that maybe another area scout doesn't know? Or do you have a long-standing relationship with his college coach at a university where you can get something, a tidbit, something about an injury, something about his makeup off the field that another team doesn't have? So it's on you. It's on you as the area scout or the cross checker or whoever it may be. Try to find that seam, try to create that advantage because there's only so many advantages you can create in the game outside of just the general knowledge that everybody has on players. But it's on you to trust yourself to form the relationships. I think the relationship piece is the biggest factor in creating advantages and competitive advantages. So, I think that transcends baseball too. I mean,
Yeah.
at high school and college, in the real world and in the corporate world, um, those relationships allow a lot of different things to happen quickly and more efficiently than people that don't have relationships that are longstanding, that are trusted, that are valued. So, yeah, it's people helping people, and it's skills that you learn from young adulthood and try to use them and make them unique, in the baseball world.
Yeah, for sure. So how does a scout get like promoted up higher? And does a scout get like certain benefits for, bringing in top prospects, or can
Yeah.
you only like get hurt and get fired for just bringing in nobody?
You know what? That is probably one stereotype or thought about scouting that is probably that doesn't it's inaccurate. The drafting of a player is so collaborative. I think it is so collaborative. From day one, it's not you as the area scout working on your own, drafting the player, signing the player. Yes, you do a lot of homework. You get to know the player's family maybe more intimately than those that you work for. Um, but it's extremely collaborative in sharing the information and pulling on the same rope. You want every person that you work for to like the player as much as you like the player. You want them to have an unbiased opinion, but you want them to see the player as you see him. And sometimes it doesn't happen. So, and that's okay too. Everybody has their differing opinion. You could see a guy really well, pitch in high school, maybe a 7 inning complete game, strikes out 13 or 14, goes out, you bring a boss in and he sees them go 4 innings, give up 6 runs, not strike anybody out. There's nothing you can do about that. Sometimes the stars have to align perfectly in order for a player from your region to get taken. And that being said, even when a player is taken from your region, it's super collaborative from analytics to player development, to coaches and coordinators, to strength conditioning, to our amateur scouting department, to our front office, the big league front office. Everybody's in draft meetings discussing players. So when we bring a guy in, it's really an accomplishment from the organization's perspective and an objective from everybody that works with the Old English D on their hat or on their chest to get that player to Comerica Park. And that being said, sometimes it's just the luck of the draw, who pans out and who doesn't pan out. There's first round picks. There's dozens every year that, you could go look up a draft and you have no idea who half those guys are from the 2016 first round. And then again, there's big leaguers in the 10th round and the 19th round and the 30th round, wherever it may be. And now we only have 20 rounds, but there's still big leaguers everywhere. So that's what makes it so attractive, is that although guys are paid differently when they're first drafted, everybody has the same advantage in the minor leagues. You're just a
Mhm.
player and you still have to work just as hard as the guy next to you. If you made $20,000 signing bonus or if you made $1 million signing bonus,
Mhm.
the the advantage of the signing bonus is non-existent. You got to work just as hard as the next guy. And you know what? If you land 4 or 5 big leaguers out of a draft class, you had a pretty good year.
Yeah.
But I can't stress enough. It's a teamwork effort from the first day you identify him to the day you draft him to the day he becomes a Tiger. There is so many people that have a piece of that puzzle in that player's success story.
Yeah, yeah. So you've talked a lot about family and relationships, building relationships.
Hmm.
So when you do that, is it harder to stay like objective in the terms of the player, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great question. You know what? The heart strings pull for a guy when you create a really good relationship with he and his family. Um, some of the best relationships don't always correlate with the best players. Sometimes it's the player that might be destined for college as a high school player, but there's something that clicks among that player, among his family, among the information you're collecting, and it's all valuable. You know, you can store that up, and who's to say that relationship's not going to benefit you down the road when that player's in college? Maybe he is from Ohio, goes and plays at Arkansas. You can still translate that information over to the area scout that covers Arkansas when that player's in college. Um, and it's valuable. It's valuable 2 years later, 3 years later, the year of, whatever it may be. Um, Information is key in this game, and you hope to create early relationships and foster them all the way through, hopefully them being a part of your organization. But, yeah, the goal is to create good relationships with everybody. It doesn't always happen that way. I would say some of the more enjoyable times are those in-home meetings you have with high school players, though. It's true grassroots, kind of the ground floor of what makes them the player and person they are. You got mom, dad, brother, sister, grandma, grandpa, a lot of the times there. Um, and you get a lot more information that way. Not to say you don't get to know a college kid by going to a university and meeting with them in a public space, or a private space, I should say. But it's those in-home meetings where, you know what, this is a fantastic family. There's no surprise why this guy's contributing to his high school team and putting himself in a good position for the draft. But like I said, can't be preached um, infrequently. Information is so key, and that starts with those relationships. And the the biggest fear, I'd say one of the biggest fears of scouts is that you don't have enough information on a guy. You draft a guy, somehow you get burned because you missed out on information. You didn't get to know the family well enough. You didn't know that about his injury history or that incident that happened in high school. That's on you as an area scout. You better know the players on your list. When we take them, there shouldn't be any surprises. They should know who you are. The parents should know who you are. You should have created a relationship, and there should have been a lot of rocks that were unturned, or that were turned over, I should say, throughout the scouting process to make the best decisions.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm guessing it'd probably feel pretty amazing to be one of those scouts, having a Detroit Tigers scout in your house, talking to them. That probably feel
Yeah,
amazing.
it's fun, man. It's fun. You never know what you're gonna get. You might get a good meal, you might get dessert, coffee, you might get a dog gnawing at your leg. I've had all of those. And I'm sure there's gonna be something new this winter. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's always fun talking with players and parents.
So have you ever had any players that you personally have like recommended or worked with, make their way up to Tigers or maybe triple or double A or
Yeah.
any of the minors?
Yeah, yeah, and he's done all the work himself, obviously, being a Detroit Tiger. But one of my favorite stories is my first draft, 2019, and the 19th round. I signed Kerry Carpenter,
Oh
who's
yeah. Yeah.
who's paved the way for his success. He's worked his butt off. There was a lot of people as well that liked him enough to bring him into our organization. But he was a fun one. He started off at a junior college for a couple years, came to Virginia Tech as a transfer. This is when I was covering the Mid-Atlantic and living in Charlottesville, Virginia. Um, had a decent year, wasn't fantastic, but there was something about the way he just controlled his. If we talk about body control, this guy has body control in his swing. He knows where the barrel of the bat is at all times. He had the ability to really repeat what he did well over and over and over again. Didn't always result in success that junior year at Virginia Tech, which is why he dropped to the 19th round. But I felt all along there was serious value in this player well sooner than the 19th round. It was by far and away the guy that pounded the table hardest for throughout the spring when I got to know him during the fall time, and then up leading to the draft. He had a heck of a journey. He's obviously having tremendous success. Happy for him. But the thing with him too is he's a tremendous human being off the field. Man of faith, married, has a kid, but the most normal human being you'll talk to. Humble, big heart, very kind, just happens to be really talented at hitting a baseball a long ways. And he worked his tail off in the minor leagues because a 19th rounder, guys have every reason to maybe overlook a player like that in development, and they didn't, and he didn't, and he's reaping the rewards. So that's the most enjoyable story thus far. And hopefully there's some more down the pipeline.
Yeah, yeah. So a question I had coming in was, have you ever found any hidden gems? So
Yeah.
I think I'd consider that.
Yeah. I mean, it's
yeah.
a good, yeah. And that story, Matt, it's an ode to just sticking to your process in scouting. If you firmly believe something, and I don't have all the answers, I'm wrong more than we're right. And all of us are, we get a lot more wrong than we do right with players. But I'd say it just leads to, I think, the biggest attribute in scouting, which is trust. If you trust yourself, trust your eye, trust your gut, the way you communicate, the way you seek out information, at the end of the day, you're putting yourself in a pretty good spot that the players that you feel strongest about, that your gut tells you this is a big leaguer, it allows you to speak clearly about them, allows you to speak effectively. And then at the end of the day, hopefully you can get them in front of the right eyes to hopefully one day be a Tigers minor leaguer and then a Detroit Tiger big leaguer.
Yeah. And so moving to another topic,
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering on how you become like maybe just a scout in general. Is there like a specific education degree? Are a lot of scouts like former players, either college or, pros somewhere? How do you
Yeah.
get into the scouting?
Certainly. Yeah, it's a good mix now. I'd say years ago, it used to be almost a prerequisite to be a player. Or it seemed that way. Most guys were minor league players, pro players, whatever it may be. Now it's a really good mix of guys that are really intelligent analytically and have worked their tail off in baseball ops departments in their colleges. And then there's still a lot of guys, like myself, played small school baseball, had a passion for it, knew I wasn't going to play any further than college. And for myself personally, started with a couple different twists and turns. Graduated from Denison in 2017. Started as an intern in the Cape Cod Baseball League out there in Massachusetts. Did that for a summer. That landed me an internship with Major League Baseball in the Arizona Fall League. Worked out in the Peoria area with the Peoria Javelinas during that fall league. So it got me exposed to a lot of prospects, minor league prospects, guys that were really close to knocking on the big league door. Another chance to just be around baseball players, intelligent minds, wear a couple different hats with that organization. And then following that period of time, a big thing, it's not quite as big anymore with Zoom calls and phone calls and early interviews. But the winter meetings were always a big piece to the hiring cycle. So I attended twice. I attended in Maryland, and I attended as well in Tampa, Florida. That would have been, the fall or the winter of 2017 in Tampa. Got a chance to interview with the Detroit Tigers for an internship position. Luckily enough, was hired in a video internship, worked in Lakeland for 9 months, which is our spring training home. Got to live like a player, lived in the player dorms, got to hang around the players, got to hang around a lot of different personnel from player development, coaching, scouting, international scouting, whatever it may be. And it was a dream. It was a dream just because you got to see what life was like under the hood, stuff that people don't see every day. That responsibilities were enjoyable, but the experiences outside of work were even more advantageous for kind of opening my eyes to what I wanted to do in the future. Luckily enough, that pivoted from 9 months to a position opening up in the Mid-Atlantic with us, and was very blessed to land that spot as a Mid-Atlantic area scout back in the fall of 2018. And pivoted from that position to what I'm working now, which is the Midwest area scout. Just at the end of 2023 was when I first started back here in Ohio. So, yeah, it's definitely not a prerequisite to play, but you got to love it. You definitely have to have a sense of being a people person, being very unselfish, really understanding that there's also going to be a lot of alone time. So you got to be digging into the travel and being your own boss in certain senses with how you conduct yourself and the process that you work with on the field, scouting games, and behind the scenes in the hotel rooms, how you write reports, all of that sort of thing. So you got to find intelligence, baseball smarts, and kind of get some grit to be able to take on the schedule. But overarching theme, is trust through the whole thing. Just understanding that, what you see and what you see on the baseball field, decipher it, absorb it, and try to learn from as many possible people that you interact with whatever position I was in. Just be a sponge. And I always thought, listen more than you talk, because I feel like that's effective in the game of baseball, especially in scouting. You can pick up a lot of stuff. Just, you can listen a lot more effectively than sometimes you can talk.
Yeah, that's great advice. So, what recommendations or more advice would you give to someone wanting to get into like the sports business, like someone in high school?
Yeah,
Maybe not scouting exactly, but somewhere in the
certainly.
sports field.
Yeah, I would say, first and foremost is throw a wide net out there. Um, I would, I like to think that, it's never been more competitive to get into the world of sports. So you have to find your own individual creativity, your unique angle, what you bring to the table. But the net starts wide. And that being said, referring to just being open to any position. I started prior to any real scouting position. I worked with the Toledo Mud Hens for 2 summers as a PR intern and had a communication degree in college. Didn't really think that was where I wanted to land in baseball in the PR side, but knew it would give me a wealth of experiences with players, with front office, with media, and a nice challenge. And that was kind of throwing a wide net. And I would recommend that to anybody. You can learn a lot. You interact with a lot of different people just because it's so competitive that, and you can't get down, I would say, if you land a position and it doesn't lead you to a full-time position right off the bat. The sports world is a big internship world. I had multiple internships. I know many people that had multiple internships. It takes a unique individual to be getting hired full-time right out of college. That person is obviously a pretty high achiever and in some rare air if that happens. So it's taking some punches. Maybe some stuff's unpaid. Maybe some stuff doesn't pay very well. But that's the sports world, and always understanding that there's a lot of people that want your position. I try to tell myself that every day. Don't take a day for granted, because the sports world is so unique that it just attracts a wide range of men and women from all walks of life that want to be a part of it. But overall, casting a wide net and learning from others is a huge advantage. Like I said earlier, just by listening and forming relationships, asking questions, those are natural ways to create relationships, connections. People know your name. People might advocate for you down the road if you need a reference, or you need a nod for a position. But all of those things combined are kind of, I think good pieces of advice in the sports world, just because it's not the corporate world. It's not the world. It's not the medical world. It's not working in law. It's not more streamlined paths. So you got to cast a wide net and be able to kind of be a team player with whatever you're asked to do with whatever that first position might be.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And now I got a little lightning round for you. So I'm gonna shoot
Oh,
some
let's
questions.
go. Okay.
So are travel youth leagues hurting or helping the game of baseball?
I would say they are. I'll give the middle ground answer. I'd say there's some that are helping, there's some that are hurting, and there's proper ways to go about it. I would say let kids be kids for as long as they can be, because if you're a good player, we're gonna find you. You don't have to play for the biggest and best team. You can play for your local team. If that's our job, if you're a good player, by the time you're 14, 15, 16 years old, the area scouts and the scouting department should know who you are. So yeah, just be a kid and there's nothing wrong with playing near your hometown.
Yeah. Did you grow up a Tigers fan?
Yes, yes, die hard. Die hard. I actually have a picture on my desk of my grandparents sitting down for the 1984 World Series, and I hold it close to my heart. They passed that passion along to me. Obviously, during my high school career, there were some really good years. 2012, 13, 14. Those were prime Miggy years. So
Yeah.
those were fun times to watch. And lucky enough, I didn't plan to work for the team that I rooted for growing up, and that's the closest to our hometown. But it just happened to work that way. I'm very blessed and fortunate to be a part of the Tigers organization, and something I couldn't have probably imagined as a 10 or 11-year-old.
Yeah. And well, now the Tigers are killing it right now this year. So
Yeah, man.
it's a lot
Hopefully
of
we stay
fun.
hot, man. Let's play deep into October.
Yeah, for sure. Rooting for the Tigers.
Yeah.
Um, if how many stadiums off the top of your head in the MLB do you think you've watched a game in?
Oh, gosh, my dad and I talk about it often. I think we're probably at 16 or 17. Um, I to be honest, Matthew, I don't do as much traveling during baseball season for leisure. It's a
Mhm.
trip to Comerica, it's a trip maybe to Cleveland, it's a trip to Wrigley Field, where my brother lives in Chicago, but rarely do I get to make a trip out west or in the middle of the country to see a game. It would usually have to be late, but yeah, man, there's plenty of good ones out there that I have not been to, and you know, I I I hold those experiences close, but some of the gems of the game, are right near us. I mean, Cleveland's a good one. I like Comerica. Wrigley Field's not far from Ohio, and that's hard to beat. That baseball experience is one of one.
Yeah. What is the weirdest superstition you've seen in the clubhouse, if you've seen
Hmm.
any?
Weirdest superstition. You know, I haven't seen a lot of superstitions with players. I will say one thing that I think is kind of a superstition, and it's kind of a pet peeve as well, is the sliding mitten that you see every player
Oh
have
yeah.
in their back pocket when they're going up to bat. Um, I think it's superstitious. Guys probably think they need it in their pocket to hit. First off, you don't need it to hit. Second off, most of the time you probably don't steal bases, so you don't need the sliding mitt at all. So I think that's funny. That being said, I can't knock it too hard. I think in high school, if I were in high school today, I'd probably be the player that asked mom and dad for the latest and greatest gear as well. So, but there's plenty of superstitions with big leaguers still, from what they eat before the game. That's probably the most frequent that I've seen with amateurs, high school, college, and minor league, major leaguers is the meals, man. They are, whether it be for health benefit or just for repetition,
Mhm.
guys want the same thing over and over and over again, pre-game, post-game, when they are set to pitch. And, there's not much offset to that.
Yeah. Um, what are the best what's the best college stadium you've been in? Baseball. Best minor league stadium and best high school stadium you've seen a game in.
Okay, I like this. Best college stadium, I'd say, is tied. Um, Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, is hard to beat. The backdrop in Lynchburg, the setting, it's gorgeous. It's in the middle of the Virginia mountains. And then Chapel Hill, North Carolina is a tough one to beat as well. There's some other great stadiums. I've been to SEC, ACC. Those I spent a lot of time at, so I think I feel a little bit more fondly about those two. High school fields. I mean, you can't beat Don Cover Field. Are you kidding me? On
Yeah, Don
Bancroft.
Culver
Let's
Field.
go, man. I'm not even going to give another answer. That one's held close to my heart. Everything else pales in comparison. Um, Minor league stadium. Fifth Third Field's also hard to beat. Fifth Third Field, but a couple other doozies. Fort Wayne with the Tin Caps, the Padres High A affiliate is fantastic. And then where else? Yeah, those two stand out. West Michigan and Grand Rapids with our High A affiliate, the Whitecaps. Tremendous fan base. Grand Rapids is gorgeous in the summer. Those three are kind of ones that stick out, when I'm thinking about this.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I was hoping Don Culver was going to be your favorite high school
Yeah,
stadium.
man. Oh gosh. I mean, it's a hitter's park, but And it's one of the last, it seems like one of the last true natural surfaces that for the time being
Yeah,
is going to stay a natural surface. Every field you see in the area, college, high school, minor leagues, turf is turf is the rage.
hmm,
Even our football field on Bancroft has the turf, which I
turf. Yep.
understand that, but I'm not a big fan of the turf on a baseball field because it's not what you're going to play in if you make it to the big leagues or the minor leagues, and habits become extremely catered to the turf when you're on turf. Hops are more predictable. The way a ball scoots off the bat becomes more predictable. It's a slower version of baseball. So yeah, that's me on my soapbox about natural fields.
All right. How about if you're just watching a baseball game just for fun? Can you even watch it for fun anymore? Or is the scouting always on?
Man, I'd say I still watch it for fun, but the brain always kind of works in a lens of scouting. You watch a player's body control, or you watch the way a pitcher pitches a guy in the first inning and then how he manipulates his arsenal for that second time around when he faces him or his third time around. There's a lot of that. It's always kind of your eyes kind of just track the grades. That seemed like that was a well above average throw. That seemed like it was a very what we call fair or fringy breaking ball. Wasn't very good. It hung in the middle of the plate. It was hit really hard. Um, yeah, I don't think that's ever going to be shaken. You definitely used to watch the game and just look for balls hit and play or look for homers or strikeouts. Now, and for the time being, and I would imagine my lens will never change. It's just there's always a bit of a scouting cap or lens that you have when you're watching a game, which is a good thing. It's a fun way to watch it.
Yeah. What would you say is your favorite baseball movie and why?
Oh, this one's easy. The Rookie is by far my number one seed. I just watched it the other day on a flight after an event coming back from California. And yeah, I think that's probably not a number one seed for many people, but that came out right when Eric and I were in like the primes
Hmm.
of our baseball careers as 10-year-olds. And that movie it gets me every time. There's ironically enough, there's scouts in that movie, and they find a 40-year-old throwing 100 miles an hour, and it's a great story. And I think it's actually it's an accurate story because it's actually true. And Dennis Quaid looks like he could pitch. It wasn't a fluke. That wasn't a stunt double.
Yeah, I'm personally a
There
Sandlot
we
guy.
go.
I like the
There we
Sandlot a
go.
lot. That's a really
Yeah.
good one.
There's not many bad ones. There's not many bad ones. Everybody talks about Moneyball being inaccurate with not talking about some of the All-Stars that played for the Oakland A's that season, which is true. But they still were on the cutting edge of some pretty advanced things off the field with their analytics side of things.
All right. And is artificial intelligence at all being used in scouting players?
I would say not in scouting players, but I would say in analyzing body movements. That's not necessarily scouting, but biomechanically, player development wise, health and wellness wise, I think it plays a role. I think tech fits most properly in those regions of baseball, just from a health perspective, keeping players healthy when they become part of your organization. And biomechanics has been around for years. That's not exactly AI, but there is AI that is involved in biomechanics now. So I would say player movements, yes, it's very active and probably will continue to be in how AI merges with the tech space and the biomechanics space. But pure scouting wise, I think area scouts and amateur scouting, it is going to be living long and well. You can't duplicate, I think, some of the things that we go through on the field or see on the field with artificial intelligence. There's going to be something lacking, something missing, And like I said, I think the overarching theme with a lot of this is relationships. It'll be a day when an AI machine or robot can create a better relationship than another human with a high school player, a parent, a kid, a coach. I don't think that'll ever happen. So I think scouting is safe. I think other spaces of other sports, it's different. But who knows? I could be dead wrong. I could be dead wrong. And in 5 years, I am swallowing my words. So, but I think we're scouting is safe and alive and well, I think, for the future.
Yeah, I think it's in a good spot. I don't think there's any danger.
Yeah, but who knows, man? They might know what we're thinking more than we know what we're thinking. You know,
Maybe.
it could happen.
All right. And the final question I got for you tonight is, what are you doing on any given Monday?
Any given Monday, to be honest, Matthew, is probably writing reports because Mondays in the spring, especially, it's your admin day. You know, you've spent the whole weekend scouting. You spent the whole week scouting from Tuesday through Sunday. And typically your Mondays, in any area scout or scout will tell you, Mondays are usually your admin day. You get around your iPad, your laptop, you bust out the coffee, and you start writing your reports, getting all your paperwork done, and getting everything in the system for those to read and for everything to be streamlined. So, you know, Monday is a sigh of relief, but it's also gets you set up for Tuesday through Sunday.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for the interview. I mean,
Absolutely, man.
that was a
This
lot of
is
fun.
yeah, this is fantastic, man. And you know, I know you got some guests in the hopper and whatnot. And yeah, it's always fun to talk shop. I don't think people do it often enough.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I'm excited to follow your progress with this and the other guests to come. And you know, thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been an honor. And yeah, man, to talk to another night. How can you pass up that opportunity? Am I right?
Yeah. 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 Well, thanks a lot.